Welcome to the Divine Style Podcast with Gerlinda, Stella, personal stylist and self-love coach, and Alison, Maiden, psychic medium, spiritual healer and metaphysical teacher. Each episode you'll experience spiritual lessons to cultivate self-love and self-expression so you can become the best version of you.
Hi, I'm Gerlinda.
And I'm Alison.
Today we are talking about past lives and past life healing. For me, when I used to think of past lives, I want to say skeptical, but I'm open to a lot of things. And I remember talking to you about this because I thought it was very funny. I'm like, it would be really cool to find out what all my past lives are. And you said, why? And I said, I don't know, because it would be fun. And then you said, that's not the purpose of finding them out. When you hear about past lives, or when I have heard of them, it has been like people are like, oh yes, I was Cleopatra, I was Marilyn Monroe, and it almost does sound so far-fetched that you think, well, why weren't you the janitor?
And that's why when you do actually have a past life regression and you do go back to a life where you were just a pleb, like you were someone that wasn't anybody, and you're thinking to yourself, well, that's not terribly exciting, but then there's that really strong connection to this life. And I've had, as you know, I've exposed myself to many different modalities in this way, but I had some very deep level past life regression therapy done in my 20s. And some of those lives were mind-blowingly bad, so intense, and things that I went through. And I was coming out of those sessions thinking, why am I doing this? But as you say, I was feeling better. Things were leaving me. Things that I'd been scared or worried about for years were just gone, or they weren't there anymore. And so it's a really interesting way of looking at what's happening in our life at the moment, why it's coming up. Now, of course, if you believe in reincarnation, which I do, it makes sense to me that you're going to have those patterns repeating. You're going to have those people from those past lives coming back in, doing the same thing they did to you, just in a different format, because, hey, it's not the 1800s anymore. Now it's modern day. But you're still going to have the same feelings surrounding it.
Incredible. So these come on. Now, one thing I think we may have spoken about this on a previous episode. One way I tried to get my head around it, maybe it's actually your DNA, like you're remembering what happened to your family. Yeah. Like a great-grandmother or a great-grandfather. No, they can be varied. I mean, we can have those memories too. Yes. It could be, a completely different skin color. You could be a completely different race. It's so wide and varied. I know when we did this for the first time, I was going through some family struggles, and I remember you saying, now this is where a past life, this is karmic, this is where this will help to heal what you're going through. And the person I was struggling with at the time was my sister, and we've had, quite a tumultuous relationship throughout our lives. And you took me back to Rome, and at the time my sister was a child that I was taking care of. And in this past life memory, I was trying to protect her and another child from the actual parents of these children, who were not very great parents. They were quite heavy-handed. And in my protection of them, I was actually killed. And when I was going through this, I was sobbing. I was really crying because I felt it, and it felt true, which was such a strange thing because I could get the imagery. I could see exactly what was happening. And it was very difficult to imagine being able to try and make something like that up. And once you'd done the healing, once we'd spoken about it, we did some of the methods that you do to help clear that. I understood that my whole life I've always tried to protect my sister, and she maybe not necessarily wanted my protection. Yep. Or maybe at times when she did, I didn't feel like I did a good enough job, or she would feel like I wasn't doing a good enough job because she, whenever she has a problem, she calls like she wants me to fix it or solve it. And now I can say, what are you going to do? Whereas in the past, I would want to fix it. She doesn't live near me, so I'd want to fly to see her, or I'd call to check in all the time. But it really changed that dynamic to go, yeah, I was able to let that go.
Yes, and it makes a huge difference in people's lives. And I've done healings now for a long time, and some of the healings have been like so profound that they've even had body changes and things that where they have had a crippling pain that wouldn't go away, and they tried everything. I can't tell you the name of the person because you actually know them, but it was a situation with a person that had a terrible shoulder pain, and they put it down to a sporting injury years ago, but it didn't add up. Like, the pain was in a position where the injury wasn't able to really give them that kind of pain, if you know what I mean. So what had happened there was they were in a similar environment. Now, back where the issue actually started was when they were in a group of people that were going to war. Now, they were on a field with a bunch of people going to war.
I've always thought that about sport.
When you're looking at the same, only, different, no weapons as such, but it's the same sort of mentality. We want to win. So back in that time frame, this person was actually pinned through the shoulder and pinned to a tree and made to watch terrible atrocities that had happened. So there was this terrible weight on this person about, being able to, I suppose, overcome that feeling of responsibility. And then once he'd gone through that and we'd cleared it, the pain went away.
Incredible when it can be a physical manifestation cleared through a past life memory.
Yeah. It's amazing, really.
Absolutely amazing. I know we did another one recently, and I thought it was really strange because the things that happen is the memory just sort of pops into your mind, and it's not that there's no one giving you any indication. It's not like there's somebody whispering, oh, is it this or is it that? It's you ask the question, where are you? And you get a direct image comes back to you. And I was like curled up on the floor. I was actually a male and I was in Afghanistan, and I saw the crowd of people looking at me, and it was just incredible to go, well, I wasn't quite sure what we were doing at the time or what I was doing there, but as soon as we worked out that, it was that I'd been, cursed for my speaking out or saying anything, incredibly, like, I think I even coughed after, and I had like I could speak again. And we said that it was, you said that you saw that it was to do with political. Yes. A political sort of conversation that I'd had. And the crazy thing is I never get involved in politics. So I was like, that was that life. That was that lifetime that stopped me wanting to, and probably every lifetime forward from that moment, I would just avoid any topics around politics. Yeah,
that's right. I mean, I've had people that, can't fly. They won't get in a plane. They're terrified, and they get in, and they've even gone so far. This particular lady went so far as to have a hypnotherapist take her on the plane and hypnotise her so that she could fly. And she ended up running out before the plane took off because she just couldn't do it. So we worked with her, and it does turn out that she had been in a plane crash in a previous life. Now, it wasn't so much the plane crash that worried her, but what happened in that lifetime was the plane crashed into the sea, and it was filling with water. And all she could think about was how she was going to die, because it didn't crash on impact, like she didn't die on impact. She actually was in the sea, and the freezing cold water was coming in, and she knew she was going to drown. But then she didn't drown because a shark attacked her.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
one thing after the other. That's unfortunate.
It was a very traumatic thing. That you've got that terrible fear of going down, you've got that terrible fear of drowning in the freezing cold water, and then, to top it all off, a bloody shark attacks you, So there was these things. So she was like not getting in that plane. And we took her through some healing. It took me a few goes to get it right, but eventually we got her on the plane, and now she does fly. She's okay to fly.
That's fantastic.
Because she knows that was her past life. It doesn't have to be this lifetime. That was something that had happened to her previously. It doesn't mean it's going to happen again.
No, and I mean, these are incredible. Like, these stories that we do here are really incredible. And I think sometimes people can not necessarily go through a past life regression to have this happen. They might have dreams.
Yes. Comes up a lot in dreams. I get a lot of people saying that to me, that, it's a dream, but it seems like it's another time frame. It seems like I was on cobbled streets, you know, there were carriages, and then the reoccurring dreams, they're the ones that are definitely trying to tell you something, you know. People's faces in dreams are interesting because, I mean, some psychologists believe that you can't actually manifest someone's face in a dream. Like, you can't see a stranger's face. You'd have to see someone that you've seen before in the dream.
Oh.
You won't see a stranger's face. But I remember very vividly having a dream when I was young, and it was a very quick dream. Like, it was always short. I'd wake up at the end of it because I would always be terrified. But I kept seeing this person's face, and I didn't know them at all. But then later in my life, a couple of years later, I actually met that person.
Oh, wow.
That face was in my dream. It was that person. But in the dream, it was a past life. In the dream, it was back in time. And so when I met the person, I was thinking, I know you from somewhere. And then I realised it was from my dream that I'd recognised this person. And funnily enough, the series of events that had happened after that were almost identical to what had happened in the dream. So I was having a past life memory, and that this was Spirit's way of saying to me, hey, this person's coming up again. Same thing's going to happen again. Heads up.
Oh, warning.
This time you need to get out. You need to not go down that path, which I did do after a little while, after I realised. But yeah, it was that realisation. I was like, damn, I could have avoided this altogether if I'd have just listened.
That's so funny. I think the other thing too, people can often go somewhere. I know for me, and this was the other thing about when we were doing the past life with Rome. I remember going to Rome a few years ago and walking through the streets and knowing where to go. And Rick was like, my husband was blown away. He was like, how do you know where you're going? Like, we don't have a map. I just know. I just know where. I know where we're headed. I knew where things were, and it was a really strange feeling. And I've had the same thing when I've been to England as well. I think that's another way that people can that familiarity of being somewhere before, and definitely with people. Because it's like, I feel like we've met before, but your paths could never have crossed.
Yes, that's right. Well, that's coming up again. We've talked a little bit about the karmic relationship stuff, and it's not always a love relationship. You can have karmic relationships with siblings, with mums and dads, people that you know. All of those things are an important part of your spiritual lessons here on earth. And I think the messages that come through for us are definitely for us. They're not against us. So when we are getting those images in dreams, or even when we have that really strong urge to go and see a past life therapist, it's because there's something happening that needs to be dealt with. Let's get it done this time. Let's not go through this pain cycle again, and I can see people all the time going through patterns. And, when you're a therapist or when you're a psychic medium like me, I often see things in people straight away, and it's really hard for me to go, because button that lip.
You can see their past lives all pop up.
I can see what's going on. and it's like, well, no, they've got to learn, or they've got to have this lesson, and there are times where people are open to hearing it and times where they're not. So you can be abused even for bringing things up that they're not ready to hear about. And I think that's an important thing too to get out there, that it's not always that we can help people. They've got to be willing to let it go. They've got to be willing to release it.
Yeah, and some people do. Some people are happy being unhappy. I've realised that.
That is true. There's a set of endorphins that are released when we're miserable. It becomes a bit addictive. There's this really great movie. It was made many years ago now, but it's What the Bleep Do We Know? I don't know if you ever saw it.
I think I might have seen that one.
It's quite amazing, actually, how they put it across to people, and they talk about, how your body responds when you're going through emotional traumas and things like that. But people can actually self-actualize wounds and things from previous lives. If they've lived it, they can imagine it so strongly that it will actually come up on their skin.
Well, people say birthmarks and things like that. Sometimes I know we have done a previous episode with children. Yeah. So if you do want to, if you do think maybe you've got a child that's experiencing a past life, we do have an episode on that as well. But have children being born with birthmarks, or like you said, developing. I do remember you telling me a story about a gentleman that had, I think it was eczema on his legs. What was that story?
Burnt at the stake.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, as a witch.
And as soon as you'd gone through that past life healing, the leg healed.
There's a lot of those sorts of stories where people have also had I've had this myself actually. I was in an Arabic country, and I was in a caravan. It was like a nomad kind of life. And I was going through sandhills and things like that. And in this particular life, I was with someone who I didn't want to be with, because obviously I think there might have been times where you were just kind of sold to people. You know how it is back then. And I wanted to escape, and so I tried to escape, and he actually cut my throat. And in that life, I remember going through the past life regression with my therapist, and I could taste the blood going down the back of my throat. And it was such a vivid memory that for 3 days after, I had a welt, like a red line, going straight across my throat. And it was a manifestation of what had actually happened in that past life. And as it healed, and the healing was taking place over 3 days, it left altogether. And then I didn't actually have those fears anymore, because I had a real strong fear of, would you believe, going camping. I'm not kidding you, of being out in the outback, or being out where people could just come and attack you.
Wow.
Right?
So it can show up in all different types of ways.
It was a very strong fear of it. And I at the time was actually travelling with my job to the outback, and I was going out and doing some training with people out there. And every time I went, I was getting sweaty. I was feeling sick. I didn't like it at all.
That's incredible. I think too, the memory, like you said, when it comes up, it is so vivid that it's not like a dream. It is a memory. And I mean, I can't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday. But those past life, when we've gone through those regressions, they are so vivid and so strong that the memory is there, but the attachment to the story,
correct,
that I'd felt, and the effects after change.
If you'd have choked on your eggs yesterday morning, you may hate eggs in the next life, you know, and that would be significant.
That is very true. I guess the other thing that I always wonder with past lives is that, I mean, we hear about people when we say old souls and things like that, but at one point we didn't have as many people on this planet. So when souls came down, and then were there always new souls and reincarnated souls all happening at the same time?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's been quite a few new souls that have come through in this past few generations. And when I say new souls, I mean, you're talking about a soul that might have had 2 or 3 lives or 4 lives, and they are really new. And they're normally the ones that love life. They love exploring stuff here. That's like it's an amazing place for them, you know. Whereas the old soul's like, been there, done that. And it can be a bit boring for the older souls. Plus the fact that when you have the newer souls coming in too, you have I suppose an enthusiasm for life, but you also have a disregard as well. So they don't actually recognise how important certain aspects of life are, how precious it is to have a life here on this planet. It's not something that you take lightly, particularly those that reincarnate here. It's like, well, this is hard work. You know, you don't realise how hard it is.
Like, I don't want to do it again. Yeah.
Well, that's a lot. A lot of people say that, but they end up coming back. But, you know, I think too, new souls will be a little bit blasé and can tend to sort of throw caution to the wind a bit. Whereas older souls are like, no, I recognise what that's going to be. Next life I'll have to do that again. Maybe not.
So the more fears that we have, the more past lives we've had too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're more aware. You're more aware of, as I say, how precious life actually is.
Life is precious.
Oh, it is. I mean, I lost a baby, you know, and I had a terrible grief after I lost that child, of course, as many women do. And then I realised pretty quickly that I'm still meant to have him. I was still meant to bring him into the world. My own intuition told me that, and I just knew that he was going to come back. And then I was pregnant again within a few months, and then, you know, of course, James was the result of that. And I probably told you this story before, but when he was 4, he was sitting talking to his brother, and we'd never mentioned anything about the other baby. We'd never mentioned anything to him. He's only 4. He's not going to understand, you know. And he was just playing with some Lego or something, and he turned around to his brother and said, "Do you remember when I was Jack and you all cried?"
Oh, my gosh.
And we went, wow. Did anyone ever say anything to him? And they're like, no one's ever spoken about it. So we all know that James is super psychic. And
He is super psychic. So
he's one of those real blessed people on this earth, but he was amazing. Like, he would remember everything about his past lives. He would tell me stories about what he used to do on other planets. It was like full on. He was born with all his memories. So I just wanted to bring up about the rainbow children, and he's a rainbow child. And the indigos to a certain degree, the crystals definitely, but these kids that have been brought in now with all of their past life memories. And to be honest, guys, if you've lost a baby, and I can sympathise with that deeply, know that the little soul, if it wants to come back to you, will. Okay, they will reincarnate back into your family. And you may have even found that children that you've had subsequently have actually come back from that pregnancy, or they've been born to someone else in your family if you weren't capable of having it, and they would be super close to you. And that's happened a few times with friends of mine.
It's so beautiful. It's such a hard thing. I mean, I never lost a baby, but I've definitely had friends like yourself, and it's a really traumatic thing to go through. But the guilt and all of those things that come with it. But to know that little soul can still come back to you is very special.
It's an incredibly healing situation as well, when we just feel that deep inside that, the body I was making for you didn't quite work out the first time, but hey, we made up for it the second time around.
Well, I was speaking of, that this happening, and as I said, in a previous episode, doing Reiki, my psychic awareness and my mediumship ability have really opened. And I was with a friend, and I said to her, there's a little child here with me, a young girl. She's 12, and I think her name might be, it's like Gemma. And she said, that would be Emma, my sister, who passed. And I was talking to her sister, and her sister said, I want to come back as your daughter. And she was like, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful, that she wants to come back for me, with me to be her mum. And we do bring soul family back, don't we?
Absolutely.
We bring our soul family sort of with us in this way.
Yeah. Well, that's right. I mean, soulmates come through, as I said, in lots of different ways. So you can actually bring in people that you've incarnated with for centuries. You can keep going around and around with those same people.
In a good way.
In a good way.
Not always a bad way.
Yeah, yeah. And when you find each other again, it's like coming home. It's like being with that person. And so you might even find that certain siblings in your family, one you'll be super close to, where the others, or there might be one, they say the black sheep. There's always one that doesn't quite fit with the rest. Well, that's the new soul. that's the new one that's just come in. But you do have those feelings that you have closeness with certain people more than others. And that's the reason, is because you actually have had incarnations with them before.
I remember when I was little, I think I must have been 7 or 8, my dad had come home. My dad had a psychic reading, and he came home, and he was quite he was in a bit of a huff. And I said, what's the matter, Dad? He goes, she said that you and I were married in another life. How could I be married to my daughter?
Oh, yeah. People can't get their head around that one.
Yeah, he just found the whole thing too awkward. Yeah. But I've got such a good relationship with him, and I just find that really funny. Not that, you just go, no way, Dad, of course not. But this lifetime it came through differently. Yes. And that's part of that healing too, isn't it? Because maybe in a previous lifetime, that we had a different lesson to learn.
Absolutely, that's right. Yeah, so we can share, we can be a male or female, we can share really close relationships or close bonds, being married partners, or in the next life we might be siblings, or the next life we might be, father and daughter, or mother and
that
son.
Is really hard for people to get their head around.
It can be really difficult, but just don't forget that this is pretty much a hologram that we're in. It's a stage where everyone gets the opportunity to learn through experience. And so the stories that are being developed all the time are literally that.
It's a story.
It's a story. Yeah. Game of Thrones, eat your heart out, we've got lots and lots of different dynamics and things that are going on between couples and things all the time. And even down to that funny stuff where, he's looking for a mother, not a wife. Those sorts of things. You go, well, that's because you were his mother, in a past life. And so that when you got together, he just slotted straight back into that energy.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, and when I say that now, so whoever my dad saw all those years ago must have been onto something, because I remember my mum used to get really upset because my dad would talk to me like she wanted him to talk to her.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's it, you see.
Yeah, she would be like, oh, why does he talk to you like you're his friend and like you guys have this special bond and I don't have that bond.
Right.
Really fascinating, isn't it, when you think of those bonds that we create with people and the way that you engage with someone. And he of course, he's my dad, but we've always had a great friendship.
Yes.
And when I think of my sister, it was always like I was so much older than her and we're a year apart.
Mm-hmm.
But
that's right. But you've got that sort of motherly kind of instinct towards her because in the previous life you were her carer or her nanny or whatever it was in that life that you were, her protector. And so that you just automatically took that role on again when you were back together because that was the energy. But I think that's also part of the learning as well.
yes, that it doesn't have to be that way
Yes.
anymore.
Yeah.
This stuff is so fascinating, and I mean we can keep going on forever with it. It's very cool. What are some books that really resonate with what you know and understand with past lives?
I sort of started very young reading about past lives, but there's a doctor called Dr. Ian Stevenson who brought out some wonderful books. Life Between Life was one of the first ones that I read. Anything to do with his work, he's got quite a few, but he was a proper psychiatrist who went to India and interviewed lots of young children and people about reincarnation back in the 1960s, right? Now, that was just not heard of in the Western world. But in the East, it was like everybody knew, because reincarnation is totally accepted there.
In different cultures, that is very true.
So he was the first one. And then I sort of graduated onto Doreen Cannon. And there's so many others that over the years have come up. But one of my favourites, and also I suppose it's my favourite because I'm in it, was an Australian author, and it's Annie O'Grady's Past Lives Keys for Change.
How did I not know about this?
Well, this was when I was young and I was going through lots of past life therapy after an incident that happened to me when I was in the ambulance service, actually. And I ended up having 3 months off because I had a lot of people pass in over a week period. And I know that everyone thinks that ambulance officers and police officers are immune to those things, but we're not, particularly when things all happen in a group or happen at once, and it can trigger things for you. And I remember going home because I had young children at the time, and I was terrified that something was going to happen to my kids, and I actually put myself into a little bit of a flip over it. So I didn't want to go down that road of, being medicated and that sort of thing because that wasn't for me. So I decided to get past life therapy on it. And I went to see this amazing woman. Annie O'Grady was her name. I'm not sure if she's still practicing. She'd be quite elderly now, although she was such a dynamo. She probably still is. And she was incredible. I've just got to say, I had so much healing during that time, that 6 months I was with her. It was profound for me. I went through life after life. In one of the lives, I had my girlfriend from Scotland who was there with me, and she was just fascinated and wanted to come along and see what happened. Annie put me under, and I was in deep, deep hypnosis going through this life to the point where I was talking Gaelic.
Incredible. That is not an easy
Fluent.
language. Oh my gosh.
And Gail recognised it because she was from Scotland. She said, "That's Gaelic." And
wow.
It was an amazing experience. I don't remember a lot of that. I remember bits and pieces, but I was very deep in that lifetime. And there was another one where I actually spoke French as well. So that it's like you can't make that stuff up. I don't speak French. I failed French in high school. Like, there's no way.
And there you were speaking fluently while under meditation.
But
they needed a translator.
This is all stuff that's in your higher self, and when you access those things, those memories, you become that person that you were back then. All of your past lives are in your higher self. They can actually become your own guides. You can be your own guide.
Incredible. And how many past lives can you have? Like thousands?
Oh, it just depends. Yeah, of course. Old souls. Gosh, yeah. And not only on Earth, other planets as well.
Like our UFOs. This is awesome. Oh my gosh. Okay, so if somebody is wanting a past life healing, do you offer them, or do you have students that?
Yeah, I you know how far ahead I'm booked. I do offer healings, as you know, because you've had a few. When I have room for them, absolutely, I love doing them actually. But I have trained some amazing people, and we can definitely put you onto someone that can help you if you'd like a past life healing, for sure.
Thanks for listening to the Divine Style Podcast. Please follow, share, and tune in weekly for more spiritual and self-love guidance. You can find out more and ask questions at gerlinda.com.au and alisonmaiden.com.